Thank you, driver, for getting me here. You'll be an inspector, have no fear. I don't want to cause no fuss, but can I buy your magic bus? It's May the 22nd, 2018, and this is 508 to show about Worcester. Our panel today is Worcester legend Brendan Melican and me, Michael Benedetti. Today we're talking about transit and math. Brent crude oil is $80 a barrel, up 3% on the week. Bitcoin is $8,200, down 1% this week. Do you know what you're listening to, Brendan?
I'm listening to you talk. Did you know that I have a cousin in Anchorage, Alaska who runs a tourism company called the Magic Bus?
Really?
I do. That's not a joke. Yeah. If anyone's going up to Anchorage, Alaska, regardless if you're flying or you're taking a cruise, reach out. I'm going to hook you up with, he's been operating for over 25 years.
They drive you around Anchorage.
Well, I mean, it's all of Alaska, really. They've got a whole bunch of, like a fleet of small buses, and they're so much better than any of the bigger tourism companies up there. They really personal service.
That's terrific, Brendan. In addition to listening to me, you're listening to Unity Radio, broadcasting with 100,000 milliwatts of power on 102.9 FM and streaming at worcestermag.com. The show is also cablecasted on WCCA-TV 194, podcasted at pinecoffee.org, and live streamed to our Facebook page. You can call in live at 508-471-5265, and thanks to the mighty Hank Stoltz for engineering today's show. You know, Brendan, I just flew in from California this morning, and boy, are my arms tired.
Did you bring back any more of those sweet hats for us?
Also the rest of me. No, I just bought the one hat.
That hat's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I've been having trouble finding a good hat, so I'm excited to get a good hat that also has Caltech on it.
Nailed it.
Stay strong, Caltech. Brendan, I haven't looked at this week's City Council agenda even. I'm so exhausted, but I'm ready to do a great show.
There's a Red Scare on the council agenda this week.
Is that on the council agenda, the
I
Red
think
Scare?
so, yeah.
Tell us about the Red Scare.
Yeah, so I had a really interesting experience last night. So Unity Radio hosted a great event last night down at the new hockey rink in the Canal District at Nona's Pizza upstairs. Food was fantastic, but a great crowd showed up. And as I was kind of walking around talking to folks, City Councilor Gary Rosen, also a host here on Unity Radio.
One of the great politicians of Worcester history.
And from what I gather from the bumper, his show is striving to make Worcester great again. I don't know. He's got.
I think it's Worcester Talk Radio great again.
So I walked over to Gary, said hello, and Gary, very, very serious, which rarely is Gary very serious with me unless I've done something wrong.
I've never seen Gary be serious.
Oh, this was he had a serious face. And he said, Brendan, I've got a bunch of complaints coming in to me from constituents or questions about the flag hanging outside of Wooberry, the business my wife and I own, the ice cream shop. I said, okay. I was just confused, so I was looking at him. Currently, that flag is a smiley face, so I thought that's what he was going after. And I said, Gary, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, the white flag, it's got red and black symbols on it. And I just kind of looked at him suspiciously, and then he leaned in real close. Brendan, is that a communist flag? To which I obviously replied, Gary, you mean the rebel flag from Star Wars?
Uh-huh.
And he just looked at me silently. Said, red leader, this is gold leader, going in for my attack run. Again, nothing from Councilor Rosen. So I just acknowledged, yes, Gary, it's a communist flag. Stay on target, loosen up, and meandered away because that conversation was going nowhere. But yeah, no, apparently there's a demographic in Worcester that, which is fine.
I have no idea. By the way, I have no idea what that flag was. I remember, I knew what it was because you told me what it was. But
this is not a joke. I mean, we had people on a daily basis coming in saying thank you for the flag and asking if, we were doing a membership drive for the Rebel Alliance.
Sure.
We're close to WPI. I don't take that for what it is.
Yeah.
But we actually had one young woman park her car in traffic in the middle of Highland Street, just stop her car, get out of the car, come running into the store and tell us, she had a tattoo of the Rebel Alliance symbol on her forearm, and tell us that she never ever thought of stopping in our shop before. I've driven by a million times, but now after seeing that flag, she's never going to drive by without stopping.
Without blocking all of the traffic on Highland Street.
Including, stopping all traffic on Highland Street. Yeah, I just, I thought it was an interesting bit of psychology, though, that the more I thought about it last night, that there's a certain segment of the Worcester population that if they see something they don't recognize, the immediate jump is communism.
I have to say, I feel like visually, graphically, it's very Nazi.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Star Wars that is real triumph of the will, the medal ceremonies and things. There's definitely some like Lenny Riefenstahl stuff going on in George Lucas's original trilogy. But no, I mean like the red, black, and white color combo. I mean, obviously it's a classic color combo.
Sure.
But worldwide, it's except for I think maybe the Sandinistas.
They're red and black, yeah.
Otherwise, everybody else who's red, black, and white is some kind of fascist organization, Nazi organization.
Well, it wasn't that either. And yeah, now I actually have a United Federation of Planets flag on order. Now I'm getting worried that I'm going to have to start explaining to my staff to prepare for Agenda 21 complaints coming in from that same demographic.
Well, it sounds like it's worth it. It sounds like the anti-communists you're going to lose are going to be more than made up for by the nerds that you're going to win.
Rebel scum, Mike. Rebel scum.
That's pretty great. Well, I don't even know why we just talked about Star Wars for 10 minutes. Even though, Brendan...
What else are we going to talk about?
So even though I'm exhausted and didn't look at the city council agenda this week, Brendan, you know what I did look at?
What's that?
A whole bunch of things about transit.
Fantastic.
Because I saw Cyrus Moulton wrote in the Telegram and Gazette, mass transit plan includes new studies for 3rd Framingham Worcester tract, new Union Station platform in Worcester. And this is the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Capital Investment Plan. Right now this is at a draft level and they're having meetings around the state. And it does indeed have line items which are, let's study doing these things. It does not, I mean, here's, if you want to look at what copy that has many of the Worcester items highlighted, here you go.
Sure.
Such as the Shirley Uxbridge Worcester storm drain improvement or something is on that page. We just got a comment on Facebook. Why do you talk about Star Wars? Because you know your demographic. This is a demographic I could do without.
That's not nice, Mike.
Even though I'm wearing a Caltech hat. I guess I can't talk any bad about Star Wars people. Sorry, real nerd stuff. So here it is. Also, Brendan, if you want to look at it, we have the State Transportation Improvement Plan, which is a separate plan, which also may be in a draft state. But this got me thinking about something that we're talking about a lot, basically every single week on the show, which is like, should we be doing something radically different with the bus system, both to improve service and to have something that, as there's less and less political will to support a subsidized mass transportation system,
Sure.
and thus less and less money, we'll still have some kind of transportation system that will allow poor people to travel around, rather than, like, not dismantling our current system, because our current system is, we should maintain it as long as we can, but to have something waiting in the wings so that if our current system does start to crumble more seriously than it is, we can scale something up and have this thing ready. And I feel like for lots of different reasons, the WRTA just cannot be like creating 5 backup plans for different technology transportation systems. They're like busy enough running the actual bus. But we, on the other hand, Brendan, as people who are experts in this area, from having read at least 3 articles, we have the bandwidth to talk about these things.
Don't leave out glancing at a chart.
Don't leave out what?
Glancing at a chart.
Oh, there's so many charts. I mean,
Something that
you just glanced at like 20 charts when I flipped this through.
that jumped out real quickly here that I've never seen before is how much of the funds that come into the WRTA, how similar they are in number to the funds that come in, especially on the federal side, to the MBTA.
Okay.
It's interesting, because the Boston service, I'm sure you could argue, services far more people. I'd say
Wait, what are you looking at?
3 million here, 3 million here, just in terms of funds coming in from the federal government. It looks like the numbers are actually quite similar, but the ridership side, so the Boston system is less dependent on incoming funds. But what's interesting is that the Worcester system covers a much larger area.
Yes.
So it seems like it's also one of those whatever formula is being used. It seems that it's probably similar to, like, say, public education funding systems, where it might be inherently flawed in that they're looking at metrics that aren't necessarily the most meaningful metric. Like, if we're getting as much money for the WRTA to service such a huge geographical area, as opposed to the MBTA, which is a relatively small, Suffolk County versus Worcester County.
Or maybe it's like dairy subsidies, where it's based on how far your farm is from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, for some reason.
Yeah.
That's how it is, or at least it used to be. Hank, do we need to go to a break now? No.
Yeah.
Welcome to 508, where mostly we talk about how much time we have left on the show.
So what's the plan? We're going to have Uber take everything over?
So here's the deal. So I've been taking, I was just traveling over the weekend, so I was taking lots of Ubers as well as other transit methods, and I enjoyed them all. But it got me to finally find something. The 2017 annual report for the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. Rock and roll metal. This has more numbers. This has more numbers than the previous thing. I still can't figure out certain things about the WRTA, but I could figure out more things for you, Brendan. I even made my own chart where I typed some of this stuff into a spreadsheet so I could drill down even farther.
You definitely were at Caltech for the weekend.
Let's talk about the big number, Brendan, which I highlighted in green on there. What is that number?
$4.64.
What is that? What is that?
That's the subsidy per passenger trip. Wow.
Yeah, and the cost per passenger trip is $5.50. So basically, people pay about 90 cents, and the WRTA pays about $4.64,
Which is crazy.
for each trip.
So we talked about this a little bit last week too, where the big, I think philosophically the big savings when it comes to public trans is that
Yeah.
you're getting more vehicles off the road, right?
Yes.
But that obviously isn't happening either if the buses are empty. That's just a philosophy. That's
Yes,
being
there's
adopted.
there's definitely this. I think that there definitely is an idea where there's a lot of positive externalities from having a working public transit system. So you don't necessarily have to have 100% of you don't have to pay. It doesn't have to pay for itself through fares,
Right.
Because it's paying for itself through less carbon emissions, less pollution, streets that people could actually drive on, et cetera, et cetera.
So we talked about it again a little bit last week. What was the when you look at Uber? We got their report, or Uber, Lyft, all the ride-sharing services.
Yeah.
What are they roughly covering or charging per ride?
So here's what I figured out. Let me just say this before we go to the break. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today that's going to make certain people very nervous. People who are not used to back of the envelope calculations get very nervous once you start doing that. But that's what we're going to do. And the way that this works is you basically take your best guess at every number as you're going through the process. And in the end, you come up with a number. And you're not saying that you're actually dead on with that. You're hoping, it could be twice what you think, it could be half what you think.
Mm-hmm.
What you're hoping for is that the reality is not 10 times your calculation or a tenth of your calculation. So we're going to say our assumptions and we're going to name some numbers, just ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
Just within a factor of 10, hopefully within a factor of 2 or 3 of the reality. But before that exciting math moment comes, stick around for a few commercial messages here on 508 Worcester's Libertarian Voice.
Something in my book. One of the amazing things about the exchange Gary and I had
Uh-huh.
about communist flags outside of ice cream shops
Uh-huh.
was it reminded me. Did I tell you about my experience with the Jolly Roger hanging outside the store?
What did people think about that?
So-
yeah, you did. That people felt kind of offended. Oh,
On Good Friday in
On Good
particular.
Friday.
So I had a Jolly Roger, a pirate flag, right, hanging out in front of the store for a couple months. I just, whatever. I like
that's fun.
the open flag. It always struck me as odd. I like my open flag, but it's really a French flag that says open on it, and I feel like I'm advertising a tennis match that it does
right.
nothing for me. But so I had the Jolly Roger hanging outside, and a woman came in on Good Friday, regular customer, and was very upset. Said, completely inappropriate that we were flying the Jolly Roger on Good Friday. To which I responded, ma'am, I've read both the Old and the New Testament, and I can't remember any of the key players having an issue with 18th century piracy.
It's literally, Golgotha is literally the place of the skull. You should have told her that. You're like,
You needed to be there for me. It was. I put these flags up just for fun because whatever. It could mix things up a little bit.
Right.
It just blows me away.
What was her objection?
it's irreverent. It's very irreverent.
On Good Friday.
I mean, it's
no flag. On
piracy is associated with like raping and stealing by some people. By some people, it's associated with like interracial
Right, but
cooperation.
she was specifically... It was
On Good Friday.
On Friday.
Thursday was fine.
Right.
Apparently Easter Sunday was
Dawn
fine.
of the Dead or Day of the Dead. It's like a day. Maybe that's why the wrong holiday. Are we ready? Are we going to roll back into the thing here in a minute? We have 6 viewers on Facebook. If you're viewing this on Facebook right now, see if you can get a second viewer. See if we can break 10 viewers.
508. A show about Worcester will continue in just a moment, but first, this is Robert Buzzsaw, who lately heard a nice woman say to her son,
About your welcome home party, dear, we must ask Dorothy. Okay, Mother, if you say so. Well, you don't sound enthusiastic, dear. Don't you like Dorothy? She's a nice girl. Oh, she's a nice girl, I guess. But gosh, Mother, does she have to have such red, rough hands?
No girl has to have a rough hand, no matter what work she does. There's Worcester's lotion, and Worcester's gives the hands very efficient softness protection. And now you know. Worcester's lotion is more effective than ever. During the war, we made discoveries about skincare, which Worcester's scientists used to make Worcester's lotion even finer. Women say this post-war Worcester's lotion protects even longer, makes the hands feel even smoother and softer. It's in the stores now, same bottle, so don't let rough hands handicap you. Just be surer than ever now and help keep hands delightful with Worcester's lotion. And now, back to 508, a show about Worcester, Worcester's voice of dermatological health.
That's fantastic.
That made it all worthwhile.
But
All
we
these
lost
months before.
2 Facebook viewers.
2 Facebook viewers tuned out. No, we got one back. We're
Oh,
up
thank
to
you for
5.
coming back.
Hi, I'm Mike, and this is Brendan. We were just talking about a flag, and now we're going to talk about word problems. This is where the Facebook viewership is going to go through the roof, people. All right, so let's say, here's the word problem. If you have statistics for passenger trips, revenue hours, revenue miles, and the operating cost per passenger trip, per revenue hour and revenue mile, can you calculate the average distance of a passenger trip?
Well, I'm sure you can, but you'd have to be somebody who went to Cal State.
Caltech,
I'm sorry.
Although, Cal State, great, also a very good school. I think the answer is that no, that you
Oh.
can't calculate this. But here's the info that we're talking about with the WRTA when we're thinking about, transit visionaries like Connie Lukes are thinking, could we just basically give people a bunch of Uber vouchers, or
Sure.
I use Lyft. Lyft is a good service, or Lyft vouchers, and could that kind of be like a replacement, partial replacement, or total replacement for the bus? So right now we have about almost 4 million passenger trips on the WRTA, and this is in sort of the greater Worcester area. So it's probably closer to maybe 3 million in Worcester, and we probably have at least 800,000 and probably something more like 1 million ride share. Ride share is not the right word either. What do we call these things? Uber and Lyft. People call them ride share, but you're not sharing anything.
Rarely are you sharing anything.
You're sharing your
Yeah.
money, and they're sharing their car, which is
Gig
really,
economy drivers. I don't know. That's,
let's call it app drivers, app rides or something. So it's 3 times as many, 4 times as many people are riding transit as are using ride share services. But that's still a lot of people using ride share services.
So a ton, yeah, no, and it
Yeah.
seems that I think that's where the question then comes into play. Barring that sort of heady philosophical idea that we're using mass transit to eliminate traffic, but at the same time we're seeing more and more cars on the road, maybe that's just not the solution overall.
Well, and the WRTA splits this into 2 things. They have fixed routes and they have demand response. And demand response, I think, is where they're if you have some sort of a special need or something, they'll send somebody with a van to go help you out with a ride. Which I think that Uber and Lyft have done pilot programs around a similar kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're particularly advanced in that area. But so demand response is obviously a lot more expensive than fixed route, is used a lot less than fixed route, but these numbers are in here too. So right now, let's just talk about the regular bus, because I don't think we're talking about replacing the demand response part of this. I mean, I think that it could work into the demand response part of this because it is a very individualized setup, but we're back up to 6 viewers. So people love this math, dude.
But
It's so into
to your
numbers.
point, though, I mean, that's a completely separate issue that needs to be handled slightly differently, and we do have solutions for that
as far as
well.
back of the envelope.
Yeah.
What do I want to say here? I want to say, again, it costs $5.50 a passenger trip. You, the passenger, pay 90 cents of that, and the WRTA subsidizes you for the rest. for every mile that the bus travels, there's about 1.78 trips that happen during that mile. So what do I want to say? I want to say that, like, looking at the Lyft rides that I've taken recently, they've all been like 2 miles.
Sure.
And they've all cost like $10. This again is back of the envelope stuff. So let's say that it's $5 a mile to take a ride share service in Worcester. And the WRTA is basically giving you $4.60 every time you step on the bus. They're giving you $4.60 of stuff.
I'd just rather the $4.
Well, then you could ride the bus, Brendan. Nobody's stopping you. So that, like, every time somebody rides the bus, you basically could afford to have Ubered them a mile. So the question is, what is the average length of a passenger trip? So if the average length of a passenger trip is like 2 miles, then to Uberize the RTA doubles the cost of the RTA. If the average length of a passenger trip is like a mile, then you can actually Uberize the RTA at, and you probably get a little bit of a deal.
Yeah, no, so here's where you were worried about upsetting people about napkin math. Here's where I'm just going to qualify what I'm about to say. Is this is where we upset people by injecting certain forms of reality that might make people uncomfortable into the conversation. The WRTA math is inherently flawed for one particular reason. The service as it stands right now, nobody wants to use it, or very, very few people want to use it.
This is right. I mean, this is a thing that we've seen is that as people have more money, even people at the low end of the income spectrum, like as they get more money, like one of the first things they do is they stop taking the bus.
And
they get a car.
To add on to that, when it comes to the numbers you're looking at for rideshare service, Uber, Lyft, what have you, that's somewhat predicated on demand, right? Because your fees oftentimes are going through the roof during hours when there's heavy demand. So arguably, the more people that were using rideshare services would be bringing down the overall cost. So just from a strictly sort of capitalist perspective, there's an argument to be made that
potentially increases congestion a lot.
Totally.
Let's say also. That,
absolutely.
Like if we're talking about totally Uberizing it, then any bus trip with 20 people on it suddenly turns into 20 cars on the road instead of one bus.
But does that also turn around and have an impact on what you just said? The idea that cars are relatively inexpensive, driving is relatively inexpensive, and the reason, even though there is a cost involved, people go for it is because you're in control of the route.
Well, and because it's just more convenient usually.
And that's where I think some of these services like Uber and Lyft are doing a better job than the WRTA. The WRTA is telling you where you can go, as opposed to a service where a guy shows up and says, where do you want to go? Or just via your app, you're able to plug in a destination and any number of drivers can jump on it and say, hey, that person's going to Logan, I need to get back home out in Boston, I'm taking that trip. The idea that the consumer is the one who's actually determining where they go, one seems to lend itself to more available rides on the street, and simultaneously having those fees or those costs drop as well.
I thought I just got a text, which was somebody commenting on the show, like most of the texts I get during the show, but it was actually just somebody asking me if I could babysit today.
Are you available?
So I just got distracted. I can't do it. I got other fish to fry.
That might be the
listener. If you're a
person who just checked in.
Listener number 7. I can't babysit this afternoon. I have to go do another similar task somewhere else. It's interesting to try to think about. It's interesting to try to think about how this works out. Like on the city level or the regional level, do you just sort of say, if you qualify for, I don't know what, if you're already qualifying for some kind of housing vouchers from the city, we're also going to give you like some Uber vouchers.
Sure.
So you're going to be able to ride Uber every day, or you're going to get whatever. You're going to get a mile of free Uber riding every day.
I didn't have time this morning to poke around too, but I imagine that we can't be the first people discussing this, right? Like Uber and Lyft must have entire teams that are working.
Connie Lukes is just so all over this. Every city council meeting.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the companies themselves also have to be looking at this as well. And we also know too, I mean, this just came up over the last week or so. something that's less theoretical, even though it's a ways down the road. I mean, Elon Musk is getting things underway with his boring system. The big tunnel.
Yes.
System. I mean, and he's already projecting that within the next couple of years they're going to be able to start shuttling people around Greater Los Angeles at 150 miles an hour in pods underground. It's there's a lot changing on the transportation front that it does make you wonder how long, and I don't mean to be dismissive of the WRTA, because when we started doing the show just a couple months back and having this conversation, my biggest concern when we had Councilor Rivera on was like, how do we figure out a way to prop up the system and make it more viable, not less? But at the same time, it's like, how long do you continue doing that before you start looking at both the options that are in front of you right now, along with the options that are going to be coming down the road very shortly?
This is 508, Worcester's week-by-week good faith survey of evidence. We'll be back to tell you why transit is racist in a moment.
Did you catch any of that with Elon Musk's announcements last week?
No.
I mean, there's nothing really new. But I mean, have you followed that at all, Hank?
I did not know this. That's pretty cool.
So Elon Musk, Tesla Motors,
Yeah.
he's got a company called a subsidiary called the Boring Company.
Right.
Spelled boring as if you're digging, but
Yeah.
like just really like the name, the Boring
Right.
Company.
Boring, yeah.
So they are in the Los Angeles desert now, using some of these big boring machines,
Yeah.
like what you'd use to dig tunnels and whatnot, except they've built them specifically for the purpose of creating track and pod-based systems that intercity will be able to move people 150 miles an hour, and then from city to city, 350 miles an hour.
Wow.
And it's like absolutely incredible. When you start doing the math, there'd be like, crossing the Commonwealth
Oh, yeah.
in minutes,
Right.
And that's where it just gets crazy, that we're having these conversations about how do we continue using 100-year-old technology and prop it up, when it doesn't seem like we're having any meaningful conversations about what's coming down the road in the foreseeable future. You're really in that highlighter mode right now.
I'm really in highlight mode. I'm
Yeah.
so
Up to 8 now.
so jet lagged. Yeah, this is when Facebook viewership spikes whenever you're just talking about ice cream or something in Star Wars, and I'm just like not paying attention to you. That's what people really.
Should I go
wanna
back to
hear.
talking about ice cream again?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if I can explain this thing.
How much time do we have in the commercial break?
We have 45 seconds until the music.
Well, Mike, what we do in 45 seconds is I tell you an anecdote about making ice cream.
Do it.
When you what would you do if you accidentally ordered 40 pounds of bananas instead of your normal 10 pounds of banana?
I would make a soup. I would make a frozen bananas.
Well, in my case, it was a vegan banana chip ice cream in quantities that far surpass anything that you would normally try and put out there. So anyone on the vegan side of things who's really into bananas, now's the time to come down to the store. Vegan banana chip ice cream
I'll do
for
it.
days. Yeah.
I'll do it. I'm going to go down there.
Yeah. And if
Sounds
you
good.
just want a banana, if you're just walking by and you say, you know what, I could really use a banana right now, feel free to pop in. We got plenty, and I don't mind handing one off to you.
If you got stuff you want to talk to, let me know. We'll talk about. Let me know.
Beyond
Do you
bananas?
want to do mini pigs, piranhas, or the tarantulas?
Mini pigs.
Oh, shall I do this is the water and this is the well?
They're terrifying.
This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. And this is Worcester legend, Brendan Malikin. And this is Worcester, not legend, Michael Benedetti, with a drawing of the Mighty Thor's goats behind him. And this is 508, Worcester's voice of transit advocacy. I do want to talk about this thing about transit being racist quickly, and then we can move on to another topic if you like, Brendan. This is a little thing from the National Bureau of Economic Research Reporter, is the publication, and it's a paper or a little article called The Origins of Urban Segregation in the United States by Allison Schertzer and Randall P. Walsh. And they are looking at segregation, and they are looking at especially white flight. They say recent scholarship in law and history argues that federal government played a key role in segregating American cities, for instance, by redlining potentially integrated neighborhoods when issuing mortgage insurance policies beginning in the mid-1930s. While these government actions may have been important for maintaining the color line in the post-war era, there exists little empirical support for the notion that government intervention was crucial for the initial establishment of segregated neighborhoods. Given that contemporary urban economics literature highlights how uncoordinated intra-city household sorting across urban areas can increase segregation by race, it is natural to ask, is it possible that segregation could have arisen even in the absence of discriminatory federal policies? And yes, and what they do is they look at 1900 to 1930, and they find that there's a lot of white flight that's happening even before this federal government stuff is going on. I mean, obviously, like, things were segregated in the absence of federal laws. Like, the fact that, like, a lot of people were slaves, for example, I think would held true on the state level even when it didn't hold true on the federal level. That's kind of a segregation.
Well, and there's also something to be said, I think, too, for the notion that, especially when you're talking immigrant populations, are likely to congregate in areas together, and that's not unnatural at all.
Well, by the way, our number is 508-471-5265 if you want to argue in favor of either the bus or racism, because you can have both.
Yeah, you can have both.
They have an interesting section in here. I mean, they're not saying that, like, redlining is not an actual impact, and they're not saying that redlining was not actually bad. They're just saying that, like, these kinds of things were already happening, and that it wasn't like redlining was the catalyst or was, like, the big piece of it. That redlining was just part of a whole series of things that was going on. They say urban governments may also have facilitated separation between racial groups by investing in public transit infrastructure. The sharp increase in segregation broadly tracks the proliferation of streetcars and later the private automobiles. As late as the 1920s, however, significant majorities of urban residents were commuting using public transit in major cities. In ongoing work, we're digitizing maps of public transit systems in major cities to investigate their impact on demographic sorting within urban areas. We hypothesize that public transportation was critical for the acceleration of white flight because streetcars and subways significantly reduced the cost of living further away from employment centers. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're working on this data set. This is just a little article claiming that they're going to claim this, I think.
Mike, we lost 2 viewers, so I'm going to switch gears here for a second and see if we can bring them back.
All right.
We should be to see if this is a
Should
game.
we talk more about math or more about? Should I read more long things? Do you think that's what people want to hear?
What I just want to point out is my disappointment that tonight at the DCU Center, I don't know if you noticed a bunch of the buses and stuff down here.
Okay.
WWE Wrestling is
Okay.
at the DCU Center tonight. And on the female side of things,
Yes.
you've got a championship bout taking place tonight. That's going to be featuring Carmella, Princess of Staten Island.
Okay.
Now, I know this might be confusing for those of you who are sticking to your guns and that professional wrestling is all real and unscripted. But as it turns out, Carmella, the Princess of Staten Island, is actually from Spencer, Mass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, former Patriots cheerleader. And she's in town tonight.
I have to say, Brendan, there have been times in my life when I was intensely interested in professional wrestling. And
It ebbs and flows, yeah.
That hasn't been true for quite a long time, but I still have a great sentimental attachment to it. Is she like a big WWE figure?
Yeah,
Carmella?
she's a big deal. And she's a big deal in that universe. I am incredibly disappointed that the city of Worcester is not giving this young woman a key to the city. If we were to go down the roster of disappointing handouts of keys to the city, and this one is not being captured. Yeah, that's not okay. You know who she's wrestling tonight?
Who's that?
Ric Flair's daughter. You know why that's meaningful? What is Ric Flair most well known for?
A lot of financial issues. He's known for having super good hair. He's known for the 4 horsemen. He's known for the figure 4 leg lock. He's known for saying, to be the man, you must first beat the man. And like it or not, you better learn to love it, because it's the best thing going today. Woo!
Yeah, and that right there, that punctuation mark, that woo, is probably the most important thing we have going on in the city of Worcester.
It's maybe
tonight.
the biggest woo of all time.
This could have been the most. So we have Ric Flair's daughter, actual biological daughter, also in town tonight, And that could be the closest that we would get to a legit Ric Flair woo inside City Hall if we were doing the right thing and issuing keys to the city. Instead, we're spending time wondering if your local ice cream man is a secret communist.
You know, I remember I saw Janelle Monáe play Boston a couple years ago, and the city council declared it to be like Janelle Monáe Day or something like this, and like some city councilor came out on stage sort of before the encores and like gave her a certificate or something. This was all sort of a surprise to her, so she seemed quite moved. There's not a lot of concerts that I've been to. Have you been to a lot of concerts where that happens?
I've actually been to a few concerts where, you know, there has been a key given or whatnot.
Or a certificate or something. Yeah, this does feel like a
I'd
thing.
take a certificate. I mean, it doesn't have to, the keys, you know, they might not just have a closet full of spare keys hanging around. I'd take a plaque.
Do you think in a situation like this, it's Joe Petty or it's the city manager who ends
I
up
think the
being
keys
out
are all the mayor. I think the keys are all the mayor's office.
that the city manager doesn't have?
I think this needs to be laid at the feet of the council and the mayor, that we're passing over this opportunity.
In Boston, it wasn't the mayor. The mayor of Boston didn't care about Janelle Monáe. It was just some city councilor.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm just thinking it could be. I'm just thinking if obviously Connie Lukes, for example, were to step up, she could be the one doing that.
Possibly, yeah, no, and I think it's clear though that it is the mayor, because if every councilor had access to the keys to the city, then Councilor Gary Rosen would be able to unlock whatever secret room they have. They keep all their Star Wars DVDs in, and would have been brought up to speed on my flag.
He'd set up a little booth like in Charlie Brown at the side of the road and just hand out keys to people walking by and chat them up.
Instead of
It
comb,
would be hilarious.
instead of combs,
It would
no
be
keys
funny.
to everybody.
It would be funny. Like the other stuff, besides these word problems around the bus, I guess, like, what's our big takeaway from the bus? I think our big takeaway from the bus is that Uberizing the bus is not totally dumb.
It's really not the worst idea ever. It's
Maybe that's the way to say it's not the worst idea ever.
No, and we've had some pretty bad ideas, both you and I, and in a larger level as a city. There's plenty of terrible ideas to be kicked around out there. This one, not so bad. And it's shocking that more isn't being thought about on that front, I guess.
I just got another notification on my phone, which is another thing that has nothing to do with the show, unfortunately, which is that now available on Google Play is the movie Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning.
Oh, wow.
You ever see that?
I have not.
Let's talk about something relevant and interesting, and then we can talk about Universal Soldier at the end to kind of bookend talking
Sure.
about Star Wars at the beginning. How do you feel about the rebirth of downtown Worcester this week?
I feel just fine about it every week. I actually got beaten up a little bit over the last couple of weeks, because there was 2 weeks ago, Susan Spencer, in one of the chapters of the ongoing story she's been doing about the Worcester Renaissance, and I really don't like the term Renaissance. She opened up the story, second paragraph or so, with a quote from me, just pointing out that, one, I've never really felt better about the city, and two, the only time I really hear people speak negatively of the city, it's coming from locals. And it qualified it with, and it's people that haven't been downtown in years. And it was amazing how many people took that personal, like a lot of emails, calls, whatever. And I guess it kind of misses
People took personally that you were like the haters of the people who've never actually.
And it's not even
been
about being
there.
haters. I think it's just a simple. It's more about exposure, right? I mean, now that you're the studio's downtown, Hank, like you're downtown more often, right? And I mean, you can't be downtown without seeing something new, whether it be more people, new businesses opening up, more construction taking place. And when you see that, it's hard not to have a good feeling about the city. And I think part of the problem was, as well, is the piece that Susan was writing, or the group of pieces, which I think were all fantastic, were very much focused on either the city as a whole or downtown. And we all know that there are plenty of other neighborhoods that could use a lot of help as well. And I think that's where some of the hostility came from as well, was people feeling as though by saying, hey, things are kind of great in certain areas of the city, people interpreted that as being dismissive of the concerns in other areas of the city, which obviously is not the case. But
Well, the number one most requested topic for this show, sadly, is not Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. It's gentrification. And
Yeah.
we have been working with DeJong Wells to do a gentrification episode, which we'll do hopefully very soon. And I am generally dismissive of people's concerns over gentrification. As I like to say, if you don't like the forward march of capitalism, you're going to like the backward march of capitalism even less.
Sure.
And that's what you get in absence of gentrification. But in my neighborhood, which is a neighborhood which is not in downtown but adjacent to downtown, rents have been going up,
Yep.
buildings have been getting repaired, and people who are my friends in this neighborhood are like, they're jacking my rent from $750 to $1,000 a month, and I'm thinking I'm probably going to move in with the kids in Oxford or whatever. And I'm like, this sucks, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm I'm glad that there's like going to be less vacant lots. I'm glad that there's going to be more housing. I'm glad that a generation from now we'll probably say that was a good thing. But it sucks to have cool people moving out of the neighborhood. People have been living in the neighborhood like literally for 60 years in some cases.
Yeah, no, I think that again, we've talked about this. I think that the thing we have to hope for is that if gentrification is a process, that it's a long enough process that we're able to manage it correctly and sort of herd it in the right direction, so that displacement is not a goal and is not the outcome, right? Because I think there is probably a certain segment of the population that would say, hey, displacement, that's a good thing, right? We need to get rid of some of this riffraff. Personally,
these are not the riffraff you want to get rid of. These
no,
people rule.
and exactly, that's my point, is that like what most people or some people would consider riffraff tend to be the people that I really like.
As much as I like Gary Rosen, and I feel like he's way up in the 99th percentile of Worcesterites, these people are even better than him. I would trade 2 Gary Rosens for one of these people.
And
Sorry, Councillor Rosen.
And the one concern that I think we should start looking at too, though, there was a story in the Globe, I think it was the Globe, about a week ago, talking about in the Seaport District, the number of restaurants in particular that are being pushed out of the Seaport. Some new, some long-standing, as similarly, rents go through the roof, except we're talking about a completely different scale. Folks that were paying $10,000 a month for a lease, that's being jacked up tenfold.
Wow.
And that's
a big
commercial
change.
spaces and whatnot. People just can't swing it. The flip side of that is, again, it's probably indicative or a signal that more and more is going to be moving our way. But we need to figure out a way to balance the costs of living for people who are already here alongside the growth that I think we all kind of want to see on some level.
I want to connect this all back quickly to this thing we talked about a few weeks ago. The Worcester Magazine had their article about the worst building in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And, a friend of mine and his wife live in the worst building in the city. Again, righteous people, people of God, people of making the neighborhood a better place, the world a better place, good parents, good grandparents. And they're fixing up the building.
Mm-hmm.
The new owner's totally fixing up the building, and it's great. And he's jacking the rent way up, and they're thinking they got to move out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, you could live in the worst building in the city, and you could pay cheap rent,
Mm-hmm.
or you could live in a building which was like actually fit for human habitation. Actually, you can't live in that building because we're going to jack the rent up. You have to go live in a crappy building in Spencer or something.
Mm-hmm. I got nothing.
Maybe even Holden. This is 508, Worcester's Libertarian Voice. We'll be back with more reminiscences of Ron Paul in just a moment after these messages.
So, but I mean, that is the thing, though, right? Like, where do you draw the line between, and I'm genuinely asking, having nice stuff and holding off nice stuff because nobody conceivably will be able to
Right.
afford nice stuff.
The affordable housing model of your roof leaks, you have no heat, and your building is infested with rats, and so that now your housing is going to be affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But you know what though? Here's where I feel hopeful, which is I feel like week after week of me being on here being like, I'm a dumbass, I don't understand transit, right? And looking at these papers and reading these reports and losing viewers week after week. We started this show off, we used to have 50,000 viewers a week. Now we have barely 5,000 viewers a week, Brendan, because of all of my reading these reports. But this week, I feel like we cracked the case.
Crack the code.
Like, we know it's not silly to say that we could have an all Uber.
No, it's not silly, but
system in Worcester.
and I think that's part. But
But we know, this is what we know. It might be more expensive. It might be cheaper.
Yeah.
It might be better. It might be worse. We don't know. But we know that it's like not crazy.
No, it's not crazy.
It is something we could do in the real world.
I'm not doing it. You can,
Well,
collectively we can do it.
you know.
I think the problem though is if you said to somebody today that we're going to prop up a horse and buggy system,
Yeah.
they would probably find that kind of weird, right? And that's kind of what you're doing, but in the other direction. You're being forward thinking, and all people want is the system they have today to stay the way it is.
I'm a visionary, Brendan. People hate me for it. They can hate me for it if they want to, man. I'm not looking at today. I'm looking at the future.
Something sticky on my book here. I don't even know what it is.
Thrill of a lifetime. Get your ticket and come in. Killers of the Amazon can devour a cow in a matter of seconds, can leave nothing but the bare bones. First time shown in your city, and you may never have the chance to see it again. Alive, 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 the deadly piranhas. Brendan Melican and Michael Benedetti on the 508 show. I feel like talking about Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning is just like a real lazy radio move.
Yeah, no, and I have no idea what you're talking about. So you're doing that one solo.
I mean,
Should I have seen? Is this one of those places? Have I just become our Gary Rosen, where I have no idea what you're talking about? And
so you're aware of. I mean, let me try to keep this brief. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look at the number of Facebook viewers. Right now it's only right now it's down to 4. If it goes up, I'm going to keep talking about Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning. If it goes down, I'm going to stop. That's how we're going to do it. We're up to 5.
Huh.
Okay, so Universal Soldier, old action movie, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren. They're like super soldiers.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
like,
I have seen
they're
one of
like
these, yeah.
rebuilt from dead soldiers to be super soldiers, right? And there's like a Universal Soldier, and then there's like a Universal Soldier 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like a Universal Soldier 3, I believe, which I haven't seen. And then there's like a made-for-TV, direct-for-video sort of Universal Soldier 4. And then there's another made-for-TV, direct-to-video version of Universal Soldier 5. And then there's another direct-to-video version of Universal Soldier 4 called Universal Soldier Regeneration. This is like a legitimately solid action movie.
all right.
Mostly starring, I'm going to say Scott Adkins, but maybe I'm confused. But it's like, it has a really good opening. It kind of gets a little bit tedious by the end, but it's a totally solid direct-to-video action movie. And so you're just like, wow, okay. And then there's Universal Soldier 5, the second Universal Soldier 5, Universal Soldier 5 Day of Reckoning, which is like a combination of a horror movie and a very twisty movie like Sleuth or like a Harold Pinter play, like a No Man's Land. It has some really serious action. Again, I'm thinking, maybe I'm confusing these actions. I feel like Scott Adkins like bludgeons a dude with some free weights a bunch. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren are both in it, looking incredibly old. And it's just, and it has the most complicated plot of like almost any movie I've seen. Primer has a more complicated plot, but Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning, I think it's like literally the last shot of the movie when you're suddenly like, oh wait, now I understand. Now I'm putting this movie together. You know, it's like if in Memento, you know, the last shot of the movie, you were like, oh, this guy has a memory problem.
Yeah.
let me try to retroactively understand the movie now. It's such a good, and it's a good action movie.
The M. Night Shyamalan of action films.
We lost a viewer, so I have
We
to
lost
stop
half
talking
the
about
viewers
that.
while you're
I
talking.
know,
I feel much
I
better
know.
about not having seen any of these films.
I know. Anyway, we have a thing downtown. They're doing a business improvement district for downtown. Did we talk about the Fatty Jenkins basketball court last week? They moved the entrance to the Pleasant Street side, or the Piedmont Street side,
All right.
from the Holly Street side. We just gained a viewer, and therefore, and apparently, like the vibe of the neighborhood is good. Like the kids who like to play in that court are into it because there's less of like non-basketball playing sketchy looking individuals.
Sure.
I mean, there's basketball playing sketchy looking individuals, which is totally cool. But the non-basketball sketchy individuals, the basketball playing sketchy individuals are less into. Also, some very upstanding individuals. I still don't know if that basketball court has been locked. Is it supposed to be locked for the summer? But that was the plan.
Why would you lock a basketball court for the summer?
I mean, I think the idea was just to let things cool off. You know, this idea of like, well, we kind of want to do a reboot of this, and we need to get people out of the habit of like hanging out here and getting wasted and selling drugs and scaring away people who want to play basketball. I mean, let me say this too. This is all based on people in the neighborhood telling me this stuff. I have never played basketball at that basketball court, so I don't know anything really about this basketball court.
It's a beautiful court.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, it needs work. I just mean the location.
Are you
And
still thinking about buying it from the city?
I don't have the cash to buy it from the city.
Oh,
Can you explain to me why we've got Thor behind your head?
I don't know.
All right.
Because, you know, this is just, no, because we already talked about Star Wars, and we already talked about
Universal Soldier.
the whole Universal Soldier series.
You didn't answer your own question, Mike. What are you thinking about downtown Worcester? Or Worcester's rebirth?
I don't know.
Doesn't it sounds so silly to me when it's framed that way, though, as Renaissance
I think
or
so.
rebirth?
I think this
or-
is the thing. I think that there's a point. I think that once it actually started to turn around, it was such a surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it was like if you had a three-legged dog who couldn't walk, and then he started to walk on three legs, and he's getting better. And you're like, my dog can walk. This is so great. It's my dog's renaissance.
Yeah.
And then, like a couple of years down the line, he's not a fast dog. He's still a three-legged dog. It's still a little awkward for him. You're not like walking home every day being like, we just lost more viewers. It's the dog renaissance. Oh my God. You're like, well, the dog learned to walk on three legs, and this is great.
That's
and
good,
like, I hope
yeah.
he continues to walk on three legs, but I don't know if I should make such a big deal about
He's
it.
not
to
going
my
to be a
friends
show dog.
anymore.
He's not going to be jumping up on
Or
walls.
whatever.
So, yeah.
Or it's just not that. I mean, in some bizarre childlike way, I guess it's wonderful if you can keep the wonder alive of a three-legged dog walking around. But it's not reasonable. And I feel like, yeah, this is where we are with this Worcester boosterism right now. I think
Yeah.
it's just that we've overshot reality, and yeah.
And I think that's perfectly fair. Simultaneously, I don't think there's anything wrong with being happy when good things are happening
People
in the
should
city.
be people should be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like people should also be unhappy because it's Worcester, and that's like a big tradition. But people could be happy in Worcester. I don't know. I'm going to read something about Worcester in a couple of minutes. We
Calling
can talk
Worcester the
about-
three-legged dog of the Commonwealth.
No, I'm just saying. I was going to talk about Nicolas Cage, but I'm going to talk about Worcester. Let me find something about Worcester.
Take your time.
I want to read Pickles' Whiskey of the Child. Food is a key indicator of American assimilation. What's on the plate changes, but the anti-immigrant attitudes masking as healthy eating advice persist. In the early 1900s, it was the pickle that was deemed unhealthy. By the way, this is not a lie, Hank Stoltz. People have pickled food throughout the world for thousands of years, but when a wave of Eastern European immigrants, particularly Jews, reached America, the centrality of pickles to their diet made the food a target. They made pickles in their homes or bought them from streetcars for cheap. Writings from the time make the pickles sound like an obstacle to the American dream. Dietitian Bertha Woods wrote that the love of pickles, quote, renders assimilation more difficult. Noted public intellectual John Spargo, in his celebrated 1906 study of urban poverty, The Bitter Cry of the Children, wrote, I found 14 children in a delicatessen store, 8 boys and 6 girls. 7 of them bought pickles and bread. 4 bought pickles only. 2 bought bologna, sausage, and rye bread, and 1 bought pickled fish and bread. In a neighboring street, I just can also imagine Tom Spargo stalking these children. In a neighboring street, I made similar observations one day during this summer. Out of 19 children, 8 bought pickles, 2 of them with bread, the others without. 6 bought ice cream, 2 bought bananas, and the other 3 bought candy. For the children of the poor, there seems to be some strange fascination about pickles. One lad of 10 said that he always bought pickles with his 3 cents. I must have pickles, he said. It would seem that the chronic underfeeding creates a nervous craving for some kind of a stimulant which the child finds in pickles. The adult resorts to whiskey very often for much the same reason.
That's ridiculous.
I think we should just leave it there this week. This has been 508, Worcester's Voice of Art and History. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye, guys. This is